Tonight I want to talk about one of the principal enablers of Donald Trump and the lawlessness of this administration. No, not him, not her, not him either. I mean this guy, Chief Justice John Roberts of the Supreme Court. Roberts, when he was nominated for the Supreme Court, was hoped to be a moderate. There was some expectation that he was an institutionalist, that he would, as he described in his confirmation hearing, just call balls and strikes, be a neutral umpire or arbiter of the law. Here is John Roberts during his confirmation.
The legal arguments that are presented, I will be open to the considered views of my colleagues on the bench, and I will decide every case based on the record, according to the rule of law, without fear or favor, to the best of my ability. And I will remember that it's my job to call balls and strikes and not to pitch or bat.
But that hope wasn't shared by all. In fact, here's what then Senator Barack Obama had to say about John Roberts during his confirmation and why Barack Obama voted against that confirmation.
The problem I had is that when I examined Judge Roberts' record and history of public service, it's my personal estimation that he has far more often used his formidable skills on behalf of the strong in opposition to the weak. The bottom line is this: I will be voting against John Roberts' nomination.
As it turned out, Obama was exactly right. Roberts wasn't the institutionalist that people hoped for. Indeed, he has enabled the most anti-institutionalist president in our history. He has allowed, through his writing, through his opinions, the president to tear down institution after institution. So how did this come about? Well, first of all, Roberts demonstrated that he has no devotion to precedent as he promised during that confirmation hearing. As we saw in the Dobbs decision that overturned decades of precedent following Roe v. Wade and allowed the government to prohibit abortion, Roberts was more than willing to abandon precedent when it interfered with his political agenda. But the most significant enablement of the right-wing agenda of, in particular, the president's lawless agenda was the decision Roberts reached in the United States against Donald Trump. This was, of course, the decision about whether the president, having been charged with federal crimes during the insurrection, with his sequestering of classified documents at his home, his obstruction of that investigation, whether the president had immunity from prosecution. Justice Roberts wrote an opinion with the shocking holding that a president, when he's engaged in the core responsibilities of his office, whether that dealt with the military or the Justice Department, was absolutely immune from prosecution, not just while he was president, but even after he left office. Roberts went on to clarify, even within the outer perimeter of the responsibilities of his office, there was such a strong presumption of immunity that as a practical matter, it is pretty much irrebuttable. The only category Roberts found that there could be any liability is when the president was acting in a purely personal capacity. But given the presidency is a 24-hour-a-day job, given that you conduct the presidency using others, using other staff to implement whatever lawlessness you might be engaged in, you'll practically never find purely personal conduct by the president. So what Roberts did in that opinion was give a president carte blanche to be a criminal. And Justice Sotomayor said it best in her dissent, speaking for three of the justices. She said, "The court effectively creates a law-free zone around the president. Let the president violate the law, let him exploit the trappings of his office for personal gain, let him use his official power for evil ends. In every use of official power, the president is now a king above the law." Now, Roberts, reading that dissent and incorporating into his own opinion, described that dissent as having a tone of chilling doom, mocking essentially the concerns raised by these three justices. He said that tone of chilling doom was wholly disproportionate to anything he had decided in that opinion. Well, if anything, what these justices in dissent warned about, as Sotomayor elsewhere in the opinion described, this immunity now lies about like a loaded weapon. What they warned about understated the danger. It never overstated the danger. But it's not just liberal justices or judges who feel that this decision by Roberts paved the way for all the lawlessness that would follow. This is what Judge Michael Luttig, a conservative judge and scholar, someone who was himself a candidate for the Supreme Court in the past, an iconic figure among legal conservatives, this is what Michael Luttig had to say about the Roberts Court and its legacy. The Chief Justice is presiding over the end of the rule of law in America. Roberts, he said, is acquiescing in and accommodating the president's lawlessness, and it is doing so without briefing, without argument, without deliberation, and without even a single word of explanation of its decisions. The Supreme Court was never intended to function like this, Luttig said. Never before has it entertained such challenges from the president, and never before has it decided them so flippantly. Now, what Judge Luttig is referring to when he talks about deciding these cases so flippantly is Roberts' use of the shadow docket. So this is a mechanism where when the administration engages in lawlessness, when it, for example, racially profiles using ICE agents to grab people off the street because of how they look, because of their English-speaking skills or where they work, when it engages in such plain unconstitutional behavior, and lower courts strike down those operations, the shadow docket of the Supreme Court, when they're appealed to the Supreme Court, decides, without even issuing an opinion, without even justifying their logic, that they will allow these harms to go on until the case works its way fully through the courts to the Supreme Court and is decided. What that has meant is that the president and the administration can illegally fire people, and they may have no remedy for a year or two until it's decided by the Supreme Court. It can illegally detain US citizens or non-citizens, and the Supreme Court is going to allow that harm to go on until it reaches the Supreme Court. It can cripple universities by lawlessly suspending federal grants to coerce universities to adopt a conservative agenda, and that harm will be allowed to continue until it gets to the Supreme Court. That is what Roberts has done through the shadow docket. He has compounded the flaws of his immunity decision, the dangers of his immunity decision, by using this shadow process, this shadowy process, to, without explanation, allow the lawlessness to continue. It is no wonder why Donald Trump, after his State of the Union, had this to say to the Chief Justice.
Thank you again. Thank you again. Won't forget.
So good.
Thank you again, won't forget. That's what you can hear the president saying in that clip. Thank you again, won't forget. Well, the president won't forget that Roberts has given him immunity to engage in countless criminal acts, whether it's getting a $400 million aircraft from gutter in plain violation of the Emoluments Clause of the Constitution, or raking in billions with his family in crypto schemes, or engaging in a whole string of other corrupt acts. The president knows that Roberts has his back, that that decision gives him immunity, that he will never be held accountable. That will be the legacy of John Roberts. That will be the legacy of this man, the supposed institutionalist. Now, you cannot persuade me that Roberts does not understand the harms that he has enabled. But here's the thing. I don't think it's that John Roberts has changed. I don't think he was once an institutionalist and then decided to jump on a bandwagon and changed his legal philosophy. No, I think, as Robert Caro would say, as he did say in an interview, power doesn't corrupt as much as it reveals. It doesn't always reveal us for our best, but it says a lot about who we are. Well, John Roberts decided that he would rather be closer to the center of power on the Supreme Court in that right-wing majority than side with justices who were sounding the alarm about this lawless president. And as a result of that decision, we see who John Roberts really is. He has revealed himself. He was not what he pretended to be during his confirmation. Instead, he's become not just Chief Justice, but Chief Enabler of the President of the United States and all of the lawlessness he has undertaken. So thanks for watching tonight's video. We started doing these nightly videos as a way of identifying something really important that happened today or this week, what we should make of it, and how we can fight back. As you can see, I like to include movie clips. If you have any suggestions for other movie clips I should include in future videos, please share them with us. And thank you for following along.